Today's project's influenced by the Chinese New Year, and we're going to make a couple pieces to help usher that in. So we're going to make 3 pieces today that are going to all encompass the Chinese New Year, and we're going to talk about some of the influences of it. So first off, that we're going to be making these little envelopes, and you can decorate them if you want, or if you want to go like really crazy and do some decorative paper to build your designs, totally do that. We're also going to be making some coins out of clay and then decorating them for the Chinese New Year. And finally, we're going to do some fortune cookies. These have nothing to do with Chinese culture, as they're an American invention, but I do think that they're cool. So right now we're in January, getting ready to go towards February, and in that time frame, we celebrate the Chinese New Year. This year is the year of the rat. Now, the rat is just one of 12 zodiac characters. When I was doing some research on this, let me go ahead and say up front, it's not one of these rats. It's really kind of like a cute mouse looking thing. Similar, but it's not Mickey, no. Now, before I forget, we want to go over the standards that we're going over today. Standards that we're focusing on is the visualization and generating ideas for creating artworks. So specifically though, in that we're going to be looking at incorporating a variety of internal and external sources of inspiration for works of art, and these can be moods, feelings, perceptions, fantasy, external observations through pop culture, artists, artworks, and so using those elements to help find why we're making these coins. We're going to reflect on the content of personal artworks of art in relation to community, culture, and the world. So definitely getting cross-cultural influences in this creation of this piece. And then finally, we're going to be wrapping it up with developing personal artistic voice through connecting the usage of art within a variety of cultural, historical, and contemporary contexts. So we're using the past to help influence the stuff that we're doing today, and how we're going to use the stuff from Chinese culture in celebration of the New Year. Let's go ahead and get started on our sketchbook activity. Now, for your sketchbook activity, I want you guys to take some circle shapes. I was using a cup design for this one, and tracing that cup design so that we have these nice perfect circles to create our designs in for our coins. Now, there is a New Year's tradition in Chinese culture where your New Year's envelopes with lucky money inside of them are usually given by parents to older relatives or to young children. Older children who are earning their own money also give them to elderly relatives or to the older generation. Some of these traditions have gone digital, and the lucky money in red envelopes has gone digital as well. So some people do Cash App to friends and family. And let's not forget kanji. The symbols that the Chinese and Japanese cultures use as a written language. We're gonna be incorporating those into our designs also. I did want to get to the essence of where Chinese New Year, these traditions got started around, and I came across the story of Nyan. So now for a little backstory, today's story is going to be the Chinese New Year story. This is the legend of the monster Nyan. All right, let's preface with, I have not studied Mandarin or Chinese script, kanji, anything like that. So if I butcher it or mispronounce it, that's why. So the Chinese New Year Spring Festival, it's always, so the Chinese New Year, also known as the Spring Festival or the Lunar Festival, because they were one of the first people that used the moon to dictate their entire calendar. That wasn't until the 15th century when the Chinese people adopted the Gregorian calendar, or what we call the calendar. The common calendar was adopted by the Chinese people in the 15th century, and that's when they stopped using the lunar calendar. However, it still takes place for the Spring Festival, the Chinese New Year. Now, the Chinese New Year usually is between the last 2 weeks of January and the first 2 weeks of February, and it is a 2-week event. So that month time frame, those 4 weeks, are around the time when we do have the New Year's festival. So this is the legend of the monster Nian. Now, the Chinese New Year is the oldest traditional festival in China, but a few people concern the origin and story behind the holiday. Many existing customs and activities of the festival actually can be traced back to a popular story of the monster Nian, which helps to explain why and how the festival was celebrated. According to the ancient Chinese legend, in ancient times there was a ferocious monster named Nian, with very sharp teeth and horns. Secluding itself in the dark sea for a very long time, the beast would go on shore by the end of the lunar year and hunt people and livestock. Therefore, every time before the New Year's Eve, all the villagers would escape to the remote mountains to avoid Nian's attack. Sounds a lot like Frozen.
Head for the cliff! Who's shaking the building?
2. From another New Year's Eve. When all of the dwellers were bursting to take refuge in the mountains, the village welcomed a strange old man with silver white hair and bright piercing eyes. He was a beggar in rags, walking with a stick. Drowned in the great panic, villagers shuttered their doors and windows dead and packed the parcels of life's necessities. Everything was a sense of chaos, and no one was cared about this newcomer. A granny from the east of the village came to the old man and gave him some food. She repeated in terror of the monster Nian and persuaded him to flee along with the others. However, the old man kept his cool, soothed his whiskers slowly, requested to stay one night in the old woman's house, and he would expel away the beast of prey in reward. I'm guessing not beast of prey, but the beast of burden. The granny was not fully convinced of his promise, and she continued her persuasion. However, the old man did not change his mind. He gave no alternative, and the woman left and escaped into the mountains alone. At midnight, the monster broke into the village ultimately, but it sensed the subtle changes in the atmosphere. In the past, the entire village was dead in darkness, but at that time, the house in the east had light inside. Approaching to the house slowly, it was found all the doors and windows pasted with red papers and many candles lit inside the house. The beast trembled and squalled, glaring at all the strange things. Caught by rage and irritation, it swooped to the front of the door. At that very moment, a loud cracking burst into the courtyard, daunting Nian from not to dare come closer. The front door was open with a flash, and an old man came out in a long red gown, roaring with laughter. The monster Nian was gravely frightened, fleeing out into the dark night. They found red papers on the doors, the windows, candles in the house, and the burnt bamboo in the courtyard. Soon villagers were enlightened by the truth that the bamboo, burning, crackling red color and bright lights were magic keys to scare away the monster. In order to celebrate the triumph from the monster, people dressed in new clothes and visited neighbors to share in the joy. The news spread, and everyone spread the word of the ways to defeat this beast. Hence, from then on, on New Year's Eve, people would celebrate by pasting red around their house or wearing red clothing, light candles, burn bamboo, and later offset fireworks to ward off these evil spirits. The entire village and town, ablaze with these lights, then would stay on to welcome in the new year. Many of the traditions are still inherited today. According to the story, New Chinese Day, or the Spring Festival, also known as Gao Nan, which means surviving the Nian's attack, the red becomes the most popular color for the festival in dressing, for celebration and for dress. See, we learned something new. Coffee break, just... Oh yeah. Now for these envelopes, you do want to start off with that. It's an A4, 8.5 by 11 or 9 by 12 piece of paper, looking for those traditional rectangular shaped dimensions. If you're doing illustrations on it, you want to do the illustrations on the top center of that paper. I found this out the hard way when I was doing the other design, because it didn't work out that way. But doing these dress ups for these designs work really well. Now, one thing that I've done in the past that works really well for me is to create the design in Sharpie, so I have a nice black font already placed on my paper. Then using a wax resist, which is where we're using the colored pencils, and doing a design work around the border, and then spraying it with a tinted ink or watercolor that I've added alcohol to so that it dries up faster. You could add a little bit of water to it, but the big thing is we want to make sure that when you add these liquids to those paints that are already kind of watery, we don't want to oversaturate our paper. Remember, if the paper is oversaturated, it's just going to be harder to work with down the line. It just becomes a little more crinkly. So things to think about. All right, so for the folding process of this, we're going to be doing two basic folds that we already know how to do, which is the hamburger fold and the hot dog fold. You're doing one of each to start off with. So we're going to match corner to corner on one fold, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side as well. Now, once you have those two folds done, you should have a big cross in the middle of your page. You're going to start with the top right or top left of the paper. We're going to match it down to that center line on the hot dog fold to make our first section of the envelope, and we're going to repeat it on the other side as well. I rotate my paper around as I'm folding a lot because for me it's just easier. That's the only reason that I rotate the paper around. You do not have to. It's a me thing. Finally, we're going to come in from the sides. We're going to fold the sides to the middle, the shorter on the hamburger fold. So think of it like you're making a paper airplane. Again, using a tool to refine these lines, these creases, does help and make just the piece a lot more fluid in the way that we're folding the paper down. It just creates those nice sharp creases, and that just works out when as we're folding a lot more. I do it as an origami thing myself personally. Then you're coming in with the top, folding the top forward, and you only want to do it to match the lines on the two sides. Do not think that you need to fold down any further than that. This is going to be the lip of the envelope, the part that we close. Fold in half at the crease, and we're just going to rotate it around like we're folding up a letter to be mailed off. For those of you that are, can remember that far back, we did actually ship letters to people across the country. It was a weird thing. We now call it snail mail because email is just so much faster. You also had to buy envelopes and stamps to get that out. Weird stuff. We're going to open up that envelope one more time. We're going to fold that inner piece back one more time to create that the inside fold of the envelope, and then we're just going to tuck the corners behind the diagonal fold that we have there, the side folds that we folded. I think that was the fourth step. You're just going to tuck those in, and once they are tucked, give it another press in there to make sure all those crease lines are properly secured. Fold over the top bit, and you have your envelope. And also, I would say that sacrificing one whole sheet, a regular sheet of paper, does work better. But again, copy paper, your best friend with this project. Simple, easy. Now that we've made our red envelopes, now it's on to making our coins out of clay. For these coins out of clay, we rolled out a slab of clay. To that slab, taking a round circular object, I would recommend using the same circle that you did on your sketchbook so that you can make sure that those designs are the same. Just a helpful tip. Once you've cut out those circles, again, like biscuits, like grandma used to make, knocking out those circles, cutting them out, smoothing them out. You want a nice smooth surface for that coin so that you have that simple, no texture at all. Now, what I did find is putting textures around the rim of the piece, getting a little stamp, getting a little texture added to the outside edge. That it's a nice treatment to the coin and gives it a little pizzazz and something that you want to create for your own individual flavor and taste. Now, one controversial thing that I do that some people are like, I don't know. You can put glaze on raw greenware pieces and then fire it all at once. Reason that we don't do this all the time is for food safety. If you're having something that you're going to be consuming food off of a plate, a cup, a bowl, saucer, soup bin, all of these things, those do need to be fired twice. It's a safety reason. Once you've made your clay piece, you want to fire it once through bisque, which is then going to expel all physical and chemical water at the molecular level. That's what happens in that bisque firing. So when you add the glaze on top, it's actually sized right to the clay. During the bisque firing, the clay is then going to bake and cook off all that chemical water. That's how it gets to that waterproof state. Now, when you're doing that bisque, you want to fire 2 cones higher than the glaze that you're going to be firing to. So when I fire my kiln, I'm cooking my bisqueware at cone 04, which is 1945 degrees, and I'm using my glaze firing at cone 06, which is 2 cones lower than the cone 04, which again, that's 1828, so 1828 degrees. We're using Fahrenheit because I'm in the US. I don't know Celsius. We can't compute that ourselves. Now, with these coins, these can be all one and done firings that because you're not going to eat or drink off of them, and it is for a decorative piece. You're not going to be putting it through a dishwasher, a microwave, which test out your ware if it's dishwasher and or microwave safe before you give it away as a gift, because sometimes you just don't know. So that wear and tear is not going to be as heavy on these pieces as it would a food item. Doing a decorative design on the outside, now we're going to take our bisque pieces or greenware pieces, whichever you want to do. Labeling, putting a couple coats of glaze on it. For me, I'm using 2 types of glaze. We're going to use first a dark yellow, which I have found through testing that if you do 2 passes of it, it gives it this nice hay-like color. There's some streaks of brown in it, so it has these broken elements to it, which personally I like. I think that's a really nice colored texture to these coins. And I'm going to top it off with some red tamale. The red tamale, or the hot tamale, is going to give it that red accent, so I'll give the design that I've created in my sketchbook on top of the coins as well. Now, you can free hand paint these on with a brush and glaze. You can trace it on with a pencil and then color in those spaces. If you have a designer liner bottle, designer liner is a name brand of Mako's like drawing glazes. They're really great. You can also buy just the bottles. I know Blick sells them. I usually buy mine from them. And then fill it with glaze, load up with the glaze that you want to use, and draw it on yourself with those fine tips. Those all work well. So brush, hand drawn, sponged in using the designer liner thing, all those things work. Whatever works for you is what I always recommend. And that takes care of these coin designs for you guys. You know, when I'm shooting this video, these are not fired yet because these just came out of the kiln this morning. I will be firing these and post them to Instagram, so check out my Instagram if you want to see what these things look like after they came out of the fire. Finally, lastly, the piece that we're going to work on is these fortune cookies, and I like these just because they're fun, simple pieces, and that you can make these really, really quickly. Again, these have nothing to do with Chinese culture. They were invented in San Francisco by Chinese immigrants back in the 50s because it was kind of a boom that there is something similar in Chinese culture that they've had since the 15th or 16th century. It's not nearly as sweet as the Americanized versions of these, and the fortune thing is a here thing. It's not a there thing either. So, but I think these are just fun, and it's a cute thing to make at this time. All right, so to make these fortune cookies, all we're going to do is we're going to use a large circle. We're going to cut these out. I do recommend the circle being between 3 and 4 inches in diameter. It just makes a better structure when you're cutting these things out. Once you've cut them out, mine were a little thick, so if you do a smaller diameter circle and then you want to take a rolling pin, roll these things out a little more to give a thinner bit of clay. The thickness of that clay is going to be about 1/8 of an inch. So definitely, I cut my slabs at 1/4 inch. You want these at least half of that thickness. You want really pliable. That's the key. What we're going to do is we're then going to fold it in half once. I'm going to take my finger, round out the middle inside section to create a divot and also create a bend mark. So when I bend it the second time, the clay bends more freely with it, because if I didn't do the bend, it would crack, rip, tear. It doesn't stretch on that quick turn as much as people think. So so give it a little help and put a little indentation into that. just toss them into bisque, fire them up, bring them out. They have that nice fired sound. And then I just take some white paper on the cutting board, cut out these little strips. So I have my little my fortunes, and you just write your fortune on it and then tuck it into the piece so that you have your fortune cookie. These are just fun things to do if you want to do them like as gifts, as trading things to celebrate the Chinese New Year. Just works like that. This is a fun, simple thing that works really well to trade between classes and whatnot, so somebody can get somebody else's fortune. These all look the same. If you cut them out all the same, and they all bend and work the same, so the one kid who made this one is not going to be really upset because they didn't get theirs back. It just depends. You can also do designs and do Chinese calligraphy, kanji designs on the outside edge. If you want to add some more robust artistic stylings to these. But again, these are simple things to celebrate the Chinese New Year. Adapt them however you see fit. But again, the envelope, the coins, or the fortune cookies, these are all just fun things to celebrate that New Year. So these are all things to bring in prosperity towards the new year. So I hope everybody has a prosperous new year. Let's go ahead and wrap class up as we usually do. Don't forget to take care of the big things, which is like, subscribe, share, all these various platforms. You got something out. I hope you guys got something beneficial and educational out of this class. As always, if you have a question, comment, or concern, don't forget to raise your hand down in the comments below. Happy to answer those questions for my classmates. As always, I will see you guys next class. Until then, Happy New Year. And everybody, go make some coins or some fortune cookies. Later, guys. I'm gonna put away my tuppence. Please open the book to chapter 12, verse 11, course 8. We'll fix it in post. We'll change it later. Make it work. That'll work. Yeah.